Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the West Virginia Media Lab podcast. We're getting a lot of questions about starting an LLC in West Virginia, so we thought it was time for a breakdown based on our latest blog post. And before we dive in, remember, we're media professionals, not lawyers or accountants, so always consult with the experts for personalized advice.
That's a crucial point. We're here to give you the big picture and help you understand the process. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty legal and financial stuff, you definitely want to talk to the pros.
Absolutely. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk LLCs. What's the very first thing someone needs to do if they're thinking about starting an LLC in West Virginia?
Well, it all starts with a name. And choosing a name for your LLC isn't just about finding something catchy. You've got to navigate the legal side of things, too.
Okay, so what are the legal rules when it comes to naming an LLC in West Virginia? I'm guessing there's more to it than just checking if someone else is already using the same name.
You're right, there's a bit more to it. The big one is that your LLC name has to include limited liability company or limited company. You can also use the abbreviations LLC or LC.
So no getting creative and trying to shorten it to something super trendy?
Right. It's all about clarity and making sure people understand what kind of business they're dealing with. And of course, you can't use any words that are reserved for other types of businesses, like corporation or incorporated.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do you even know if the name you want is available? Is it a mad dash to the Secretary of State's office?
Thankfully, no. The Secretary of State's website has a super useful business organization search tool. You can plug in your desired name and instantly see if it's available or if someone else has already claimed it.
And while you're at it, snag that matching web domain. Building your online presence from day one is a smart move.
Couldn't agree more. Having a website, even a simple one, establishes your credibility and makes it easier for people to find you.
All right, so we've got our awesome and legal LLC name locked down. What comes next?
Next, we need to talk about the registered agent.
Okay, registered agent. That sounds official. What exactly is that? And is it a must-have in West Virginia?
It's not a must-have, but it can be a smart move depending on your situation. A registered agent is basically your LLC's point of contact for receiving legal documents and official notices from the state.
So if someone needs to serve me with legal papers, they go to my registered agent instead of showing up at my doorstep.
Exactly. If you don't designate a registered agent, the Secretary of State automatically steps in as your agent. But imagine missing a crucial legal notice because it got lost in your personal mail. Not a great scenario.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
So what are the rules about who can be a registered agent? Can I just appoint my best friend?
Not quite. A registered agent has to be a West Virginia resident or a business entity that's authorized to do business in the state. And they need a physical street address in West Virginia. No P.O. boxes allowed.
Makes sense. So if I meet those requirements, could I be my own registered agent? Technically, yes. But many people choose to use a registered agent service for a few reasons. First, it keeps your personal address off public records, offering a layer of privacy. Second, there are pros at handling legal documents and ensuring timely delivery, minimizing the risk of missing something important.
That peace of mind probably feels worth it for a lot of business owners. Are there any registered agent services you recommend?
There are quite a few reputable ones out there. Northwest Registered Agent is a popular choice, and their fee is $125 per year, which includes using their address for privacy.
All right, so we've got our name and our registered agent sorted. What's the next step in making this LLC official?
It's time to file the Articles of Organization. This is like your LLC's birth certificate. It's the document that officially registers your LLC with the state of West Virginia.
Okay, and what needs to be included in these Articles of Organization?
A few essential things. Of course, you'll list your chosen LLC name, and you'll provide information about your registered agent, if you have one.
Got it. What else do we need to spell out?
You'll need to specify how your LLC will be managed. This is where you decide if it's going to be member managed or manager managed.
Hold on. I'm not familiar with those terms. Can you explain what the difference is?
Sure. Member managed means the owners of the LLC are directly involved in running the day-to-day business. So if you and a friend start an LLC, and you're both calling the shots, that's member managed. In a manager managed LLC, you appoint someone, maybe an owner or maybe someone outside the ownership group, to handle the management responsibilities.
So it boils down to how hands-on the owners want to be in running the business.
Exactly. And your Articles of Organization will state which structure you've chosen. You'll also need to briefly describe the purpose of your business.
Does it need to be super detailed, like a full business plan?
Not unless there's a specific regulation requiring it. Usually a general description of what your business does is enough. And finally, you'll need to list the address of your principal office. This is the main location of your business.
Okay, so I've gathered all this information. How do I actually file the articles of organization?
There are two ways: online or by mail. Most people find the online option through the WV One Stop Business Portal to be the easiest and fastest. There's a small $1 portal fee, but it saves you a lot of hassle.
Speaking of fees, what's the cost to file the articles of organization?
It's a $100 filing fee. But here's some good news. Veterans and young entrepreneurs under 30 can get that fee waived.
That's amazing. Starting a business can be expensive, so any break is welcome, right?
Absolutely. Every little bit helps.
Okay, so let's say I file the articles of organization electronically through the WV One Stop Business Portal. Pay my fee or get it waived, and hit submit. Am I officially in business at that point?
Not quite yet. You'll need one more crucial document before you can open your doors: a business registration certificate, or
BRC.
DRC. Fill me in. What's that all about?
It's essentially West Virginia's general business license. Think of it as your LLC's permission slip to operate in the state.
So it's kind of like getting your driver's license after you register your car. You've got the car, but you can't legally drive it without that license. That's a great analogy. It's a separate process from filing your articles of organization, but equally important.
All right, got it. So how do I go about getting this BRC?
Just like with the articles of organization, you can apply online through the WV One Stop Business Portal or download and mail the form. The fee for the BRC is $30.
And is this another one where veterans or young entrepreneurs might catch a break on the fee?
Unfortunately, there are no fee waivers for the BRC, but the good news is that once you have it, it doesn't expire unless your business details change, so you don't have to worry about renewing it every year.
Okay, that's a relief. So let me make sure I've got this straight. To get my LLC up and running, I need a unique, legally compliant name, a registered agent if I choose. I have to file my articles of organization, and then secure my business registration certificate. Am I missing anything?
Just one more key piece of the puzzle: your employer identification number, or EIN.
I've heard of those. Isn't that just for businesses with employees?
Not necessarily. An EIN is like a social security number for your business. It's essential for things like opening a business bank account and filing taxes, even if you're a single-member LLC flying solo.
So even if I'm the only person involved in my LLC, I still need an EIN. Got it. How do I go about getting one of those?
The process is surprisingly easy and free. You can apply online directly through the IRS website, and you'll get your EIN instantly.
I love it when things are that straightforward. Okay, so now we've got our name, registered agent, articles of organization, business registration certificate, and EIN. Are we done with the initial setup at this point?
There's one more document I'd highly recommend, even though it's not technically required by West Virginia.
Okay.
And that's an operating agreement.
Okay, an operating agreement. What exactly is that, and why is it so important even if it's not mandatory?
Think of an operating agreement as a prenup for your business. It's basically a roadmap for how your LLC will function internally.
Intriguing. So what kind of things does it cover?
It spells out all the important details about ownership percentages, how you'll manage the LLC, how profits and losses will be distributed, and what happens if a member wants to exit the LLC.
So it's like a rule book that helps prevent disagreements and confusion among the LLC members.
Exactly. And even if you're starting an LLC by yourself, having an operating agreement can be valuable. It demonstrates a level of professionalism and helps clarify your intentions for the business.
That makes sense. So how do you go about creating an operating agreement? Is it something you can DIY, or do you need a lawyer for this?
There are a couple of options. You can find free operating agreement templates online, which can be a good starting point, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur. Websites like llcuniversity.com offer some good resources.
So I'm feeling confident and want to save some money. I can give it a shot myself.
Absolutely. Just make sure you carefully review the template and tailor it to your specific business needs.
Got it. What if I'm not feeling that confident, or my business situation is a bit more complex?
Then, using a legal service like LegalZoom is a good option. They can create a customized operating agreement for you, starting at $99.
So it's a bit of an investment, but it might be worth it for the peace of mind in knowing you've got everything covered legally.
That's right. And one thing to remember about operating agreements, you don't have to file it with the state. Just keep a copy for your records.
Okay. So we've covered the name, registered agent, articles of organization, BRC, EIN, and operating agreement. Is there anything else we need to know about the initial LLC setup before we move on?
There's one more development I should mention that came about recently: the Beneficial Ownership Information Report. or BOI report for short.
DOI report, that's a new one. What's that all about?
It's a new federal requirement under the Corporate Transparency Act. In a nutshell, the government wants to know who's really behind LLCs.
So they're cracking down on shell companies and trying to increase transparency.
Exactly. It's all about preventing financial crimes like money laundering.
Makes sense. So what kind of information do they need for this BOI report?
You'll have to provide information about the actual owners of the LLC and anyone who has significant control over the company's decisions.
And does this apply to all LLCs formed in West Virginia?
It applies to any LLCs formed in 2025. For LLCs formed in 2024, there's a temporary extension, so they have a bit more time to file.
All right, so new LLCs in 2025 need to be aware of this. How do they go about filing this BOI report?
It's all done online through the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network website, or FinCENS for short. The good news is that it's free to file.
Okay, so it's not adding to the startup costs at least. What are the deadlines for filing?
If your LLC is formed in 2025, you have 30 days from the formation date to file the BOI report.
Got it. So to recap, we've covered the major steps for setting up an LLC in West Virginia: choosing a name, designating a registered agent, filing the articles of organization, getting the BRC, obtaining an EIN, and creating an operating agreement. And of course, new LLCs in 2025 need to be aware of that BOI report. Anything else we need to know before I wrap up part 1 of this episode? Just a few things to keep in mind for ongoing maintenance once your LLC is up and running. We'll dive into those in more detail in the next part. But a quick preview. Separate bank accounts are essential. You'll need to check for any industry-specific licenses or permits. And don't forget about that annual report.
All right, that's a good teaser for what's to come in part 2. Thanks for walking us through all the essential steps for getting an LLC off the ground in West Virginia.
My pleasure. It's exciting to see so many people interested in entrepreneurship and launching their business dreams.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, stick with us because we'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll dive into the ongoing responsibilities and best practices for managing your LLC once it's up and running. Welcome back to the West Virginia Media Lab podcast. In part 1, we walked you through the steps of setting up your LLC in West Virginia. Now, let's shift gears and talk about what happens after you've got everything filed and official.
That's right. Launching your LLC is a big accomplishment, but it's just the beginning. Now it's time to focus on keeping your business running smoothly and in good standing with the state.
So where do we even start with that? It can feel overwhelming to think about all the ongoing responsibilities.
Let's break it down into manageable pieces. One of the first things you'll want to tackle is understanding how LLCs are taxed. It's a bit different than filing taxes as an individual.
Okay, taxes, everyone's favorite topic. What's unique about LLC taxation?
Well, the cool thing about LLCs is that they offer a lot of flexibility when it comes to taxes. You actually get to choose how you want to be taxed.
Hold on, I thought taxes were just...
Well,
taxes. What do you mean by choosing how I want to be taxed?
by default, if you're a single-member LLC, you're treated as a disregarded entity for tax purposes. That just means the business income and expenses are reported on your personal tax return. No separate business tax return needed.
There's like my business and my personal finances are all lumped together for tax purposes.
Exactly. It keeps things simple, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur. But if you have a multi-member LLC, the default is to be taxed as a partnership.
Okay, so what's the difference between the disregarded entity thing and a partnership?
In a partnership, the LLC itself doesn't pay income tax directly. Instead, it files an informational return that reports the business income and expenses. The profits and losses are then divided among the individual members, and they report those on their personal tax returns.
So even though the LLC isn't directly paying taxes, the owners are still on the hook for paying taxes on their portion of the profit.
Precisely. Now, here's where that flexibility comes in. LLCs can also choose to be taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation.
Wait, S Corp, C Corp, okay. This is where my head starts to spin a little. Can you break down those options and why an LLC might choose to be taxed differently?
Let's start with S Corp. Choosing S Corp taxation lets the LLC be treated as a pass-through entity, similar to a partnership. But the advantage is that it can potentially save you money on self-employment taxes.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about these potential savings.
As an S Corp owner, you can pay yourself a reasonable salary from the business. You only pay self-employment taxes on that salary, not on the entire profit of the business.
So if my LLC is doing well, I could structure things to lower my overall tax burden.
Exactly. It can be a strategic move if you're actively involved in the business and want to take advantage of that tax benefit. Now, C Corp taxation is a different story.
Oh,
With a C Corp, The LLC is taxed as a completely separate entity, so the business itself pays corporate income tax on its profits. And then any dividends you pay yourself as the owner are taxed again on your personal return. It's what people refer to as double taxation.
That doesn't sound very appealing.
Uh,
Why would anyone choose C Corp taxation?
You're right. It's not the most common choice for small LLCs, but there are situations where it makes sense. For example, if your LLC plans to hold on to a lot of earnings to reinvest in growth, C Corp status could be advantageous.
So if I'm not planning to take a big salary right away, and I want to pump those profits back into expanding my business, C Corp might be the way to go.
That's one scenario where it could make sense. And if you're thinking about taking your company public someday, C Corp status is generally required.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. There are a lot of nuances to consider.
Absolutely. When it comes to LLC taxation, it's crucial to talk to a tax professional who can help you determine the best strategy for your specific circumstances. They'll make sure you're taking advantage of all the deductions and credits available to you.
Solid advice. Taxes can be a headache, so having an expert in your corner is never a bad idea. Okay, so we've tackled taxes. What other ongoing responsibilities should LLC owners have on their radar?
Staying compliant with state regulations is a big one. This includes filing your annual report on time and paying the associated fee.
We touched on that in part 1, but it's worth repeating. What happens if you miss that deadline?
It's not something you want to risk. Failing to file your annual report can lead to late fees, penalty fees, and even the dissolution of your LLC.
Yikes. Okay, annual report, check. What other compliance requirements do we need to be aware of?
That depends on your specific industry. You might need to obtain additional licenses or permits, comply with industry-specific safety regulations, or collect and remit sales tax.
So it's not enough to just follow the general LLC rules. I also need to do my homework and understand the regulations that apply to my particular line of business.
Exactly. The WV One Stop Business Portal is a great resource for finding state-level requirements, and you can check with your local city or county government for any local regulations.
Good to know. So we've talked about taxes and compliance. What else should LLC owners be thinking about to manage their business effectively?
Here's something that often gets overlooked, especially in the early stages: good record-keeping practices.
Okay, record keeping. What does that entail? And why is it so important?
It's all about keeping accurate and organized records of everything related to your business: income, expenses, assets, liabilities, you name it.
That makes sense, but I thought that's what accountants were for.
Accountants are definitely a valuable resource, but even if you have one, maintaining good records is your responsibility as the business owner. It makes your accountant's life easier and helps you track your business's performance and make informed decisions. It's also important for tax purposes.
So what are some good record-keeping practices for LLC owners? I'm not exactly an organizational whiz.
First and foremost, separate your personal and business finances like we talked about earlier. That means having dedicated bank accounts and credit cards for your LLC.
Okay, that seems pretty basic, but crucial. What else should I be keeping track of?
Hold on to receipts for all your business expenses, invoices for any sales you make, and bank statements. It's also a good idea to keep digital copies of everything. You never know when you might need them.
What if things like contracts and agreements? Do I need to keep physical copies of those?
Absolutely. Contracts, leases, and any legal agreements related to your business should be stored securely.
Okay, this is starting to sound like a lot of paperwork. Is there a system for managing all of this?
There are tons of options for keeping your business records organized. You can use a traditional filing system if you prefer paper, or you can opt for accounting software to track your finances and store digital copies of everything.
Are there any accounting software programs you recommend?
QuickBooks and Xero are popular choices for small businesses. They make it easy to track income and expenses, generate reports, and stay on top of your financial game.
So good record keeping equals good business management. I get it. What else is important for running my LLC effectively?
Here's a big one: clearly defining roles and responsibilities.
Especially if you have multiple members in your LLC.
Exactly. This is where your operating agreement, that business prenup we talked about, really comes into play. It outlines how decisions are made, how profits and losses are shared, and what happens if someone decides to leave the LLC.
So even though West Virginia doesn't require an operating agreement, it sounds like it's a must-have for preventing conflicts and keeping things running smoothly.
I couldn't agree more. It can save you a lot of headaches down the road, trust me.
All right, operating agreement, check. Anything else I should be thinking about?
Don't forget to stay informed. Laws and regulations can change. Tax laws are constantly being updated, and the business environment is always evolving.
That makes sense. But how do I stay on top of all that? It sounds like a full-time job in itself.
It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Subscribe to industry newsletters, attend workshops or webinars, talk to your accountant or attorney regularly.
Okay, so surrounding myself with knowledgeable people and staying plugged in to the latest developments. I can do that. So to wrap up part 2, we've covered some of the key aspects of managing your LLC. Understanding your tax obligations, staying compliant with state regulations, keeping good records, having a solid operating agreement in place, and staying informed about changes that could impact your business.
We have. And remember, even though running an LLC comes with ongoing responsibilities, with careful planning and attention to detail, you can set yourself up for success.
That's a great point. It's not a set and forget it situation, but it's manageable if you're organized and proactive. Well, that's a wrap for part 2 of our series on setting up and managing your LLC in West Virginia.
We'll be back soon with part 3, where we'll dive into some helpful resources and answer some frequently asked questions.
Welcome back to the West Virginia Media Lab podcast for the final part of our series on setting up and managing your LLC in West Virginia. We've covered a lot of ground already, from choosing a name and filing the necessary paperwork to understanding taxes, compliance, and some crucial record-keeping practices.
That's right. We've tackled a lot of the foundational elements of launching and running an LLC, but we're not done yet. In this last part, we want to point you to some additional resources and address some common questions that pop up for aspiring entrepreneurs.
That sounds great. I'm always a fan of having more information at my fingertips, especially when it comes to something as important as starting and managing a business.
Well, one resource we've mentioned a few times already, but it's worth highlighting again, is the WV One-Stop Business Portal. It's truly a game changer for West Virginia business owners.
What kind of information can people find on the portal?
It's a one-stop shop for just about everything business-related in West Virginia. You can find information on registering your business, getting the necessary licenses and permits, filing taxes, and even getting help with business planning and financing.
Wow, that's a lot to pack into one website. So whether you're just starting out or you've been in business for a while, it's a valuable resource to have bookmarked.
Absolutely. And it's all available online, so you can access it from anywhere, anytime. No more digging through stacks of paperwork or making endless phone calls.
What other online resources would you recommend for West Virginia entrepreneurs?
The West Virginia Secretary of State's website is another great resource. It's got tons of information on business entities, including LLCs, as well as helpful guides and forms.
And of course, we have to mention the West Virginia Media Lab blog. That's where you can find our in-depth guide on setting up an LLC in West Virginia, along with a wealth of other articles and resources aimed at helping people start and grow successful businesses in the Mountain State.
Yes. Shameless plug for our blog is always welcome. But seriously, we're passionate about supporting entrepreneurship in West Virginia, and we try to provide valuable content that can help people navigate the journey of starting and running a business.
All right, let's shift gears and tackle some of the most frequently asked questions you get about forming an LLC in West Virginia.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people are most curious about?
One question that comes up a lot is whether they need an attorney to help them set up their LLC.
And what do you usually tell people? Because on the one hand, lawyers can be expensive. But on the other hand, you want to make sure you're doing everything right legally.
It's a valid concern. While it's not strictly required to have a lawyer to form an LLC, I always recommend at least consulting with one, especially if your business involves any complex legal issues or if you have multiple members with different ownership interests.
So if my business idea is pretty straightforward and I'm the only owner, I might be able to get away without a lawyer.
You might. But even in those cases, an attorney can be invaluable in helping you draft a solid operating agreement, ensuring you're complying with all the relevant regulations, and protecting your personal assets from business liabilities.
So it's kind of like an insurance policy to have legal advice early on. What other questions do you encounter frequently?
People are always curious about the cost of setting up and maintaining an LLC in West Virginia. They want to know if it's going to break the bank.
It's a valid concern, especially for those bootstrapping their business. What's the typical price range people should expect?
We outlined the filing fees earlier. $100 for the Articles of Organization and $30 for the Business Registration Certificate. Then there's the $25 annual report fee, if you opt for a registered agent service. That's an additional $125 per year.
So all in all, it's a few $100s to get started and around $150 per year for ongoing maintenance.
That's a pretty good estimate. And when you consider the benefits of having an LLC, the liability protection, the tax flexibility, and the credibility it lends to your business, it's a worthwhile investment.
It definitely puts the costs into perspective. What other burning questions do people have about LLCs?
A lot of people want to understand the advantages of an LLC compared to other business structures, like sole proprietorships or corporations.
So they're weighing their options and trying to figure out which structure is the best fit for their business.
Exactly. And for most small businesses, an LLC really is the sweet spot. The biggest advantage is the liability protection it provides.
We talked about that earlier, but remind us again why liability protection is so important.
An LLC creates a legal separation between your personal assets and your business liabilities. So if your business gets sued or goes into debt, your personal assets, like your house or car, are protected.
That's a huge peace of mind, especially if you're putting your heart and soul into your business.
It is. And on top of that, LLCs offer flexible tax options, as we discussed earlier, and they're generally easier to set up and maintain than corporations.
So LLCs offer a great balance of protection, flexibility, and simplicity. It sounds like a win-win for small business owners.
I think so too. Now, before we wrap up, I want to emphasize one more time that the information we've shared today is for general educational purposes only. We're not lawyers or accountants, and we can't provide specific legal or financial advice.
That's a crucial reminder. We've covered a lot of ground, but every business is unique. It's always best to consult with the experts to make sure you're making the right decisions for your specific situation.
Couldn't agree more. But hopefully, this series has provided you with a solid foundation of knowledge about LLCs and empowered you to take those next steps toward launching your business dreams in West Virginia.
That's what we're all about here at the West Virginia Media Lab, supporting entrepreneurship and helping people bring their ideas to life. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of West Virginia LLCs. And remember, with hard work, dedication, and the right resources, you can make those business dreams a reality.
That's a perfect note to end on. We're excited to see what amazing businesses you create.
Thanks for listening to the West Virginia Media Lab podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. The West Virginia Media Lab is all about celebrating our state and its people, businesses, stories, news, and folklore. If you love West Virginia like we do, be sure to comment below, then subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Until next time, stay wild, wonderful, West Virginia.